Hey, everybody. You're about to hear a synopsis of the movie Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Enjoy the show. Today is Greg's first day of middle school, and his older brother shakes him awake and tells him that he overslept. The boy got up in a hurry to get ready before his sleepy father came running in. It was now 4 a.m., and classes wouldn't start until next week. Worst of all, little Manny has been woken up and he's not going to let his mom sleep anymore. Roderick's plan has worked and he has once again set his little brother up though. Greg thinks he is ready for a new life, unlike his friend Rowley, who seems to have forgotten to grow up. The alarm clock chimed and the first day of school began with a stinky stranglehold under his older brother's arm. Rodrigue gave him a few tips to help him survive middle school. Manny P's sitting right at the table, which doesn't increase Greg's appetite, all because he scared the younger one with the monster that lives in the toilet bowl. Greg was shocked when he first walked into the school. Little guys like him have to learn with hairy gorillas who have already had a growth spurt, as well as juvenile delinquents and psychos. Greg is lucky to have Shira Gupta, who is even smaller than him. The important part, choosing a place. It's important not to get stuck with some idiot for a whole year. Rowley doesn't realize what hell he's in because he's wearing the outfit his parents brought back from their trip. Greg has a plan to become the most popular guy in school. Rowley wonders who's at the bottom of the pile and immediately gets the answer. Fraley is sent home once a month because of hygiene problems. The PE teacher divided the students into two teams. The prettier team would play with t-shirts and the loser team without. The man invented a game he called Gladiator. The t-shirt-less losers have to flee from their taller pursuers. The friends decide to hide under the bleachers for the rest of class. Greg is outraged that these Neanderthals are being pitted against them. 7th grader Angie, who was hiding here, agrees with him wholeheartedly. She calls the middle school a cattle pen where parents dump their offspring so they don't have to deal with them during the most difficult time of their lives. Rowley was delighted. He'd never talked to a girl for so long. Greg thought of wearing t-shirts so the thugs would recognize them as his own, and then he saw his greenish piece of cheese and almost made the fatal mistake of reaching for it. Greg was stopped by Gupta. The kid almost got a cheese curse. No one knows where the cheese came from and no one has ever touched it. Then one day Darren did and became the school outcast. Cheese fever started. The only way to get rid of the cheese mark is to pass it on to someone else. It only ended when Hitler Müller took it back to Germany with him. Since then, the cheese has been lying on the pavement, waiting for its next victim. Another nightmare awaited Greg in the bathroom. There were no stall doors. But the cruelest place on earth is the dining room. No one would let his friends sit at their table, so they had to sit on the floor by the garbage cans. Greg thought that the first day was not so bad, but here in front of everyone, Rowley offered to come over and play with him. These words stirred up one bully, and let now this stretch will bully Greg. In 20 years the loser will clean up after his dog. Greg instructs his friend. Their peers say hang out, not play. One more slip up like that and they'll be eating lunch on the floor for the rest of the year. Greg sneaks into his older brother's room to look in his high school yearbook to see what the class favorites look like. Rodrigue caught sight of his friends and threatened Greg that he would nail him. Rowley hooked his leg to give his friend a chance to run away and hide in his room. His bladder was full to the brim and he couldn't take it anymore. Greg dared to give his brother a fight, but he tricked him. The kid had to get Manny off the toilet. Suddenly he was frightened by Rodrigue, who was hiding behind the shower curtain, but in response he was pissed from head to toe. Once again it was Greg who was the one who was made extreme and he had to scrub the bathroom. Even the janitor knows about the cheese curse. The friends choose which club to join to be popular. They get shushed by Patty, who's about to become school board president. Angie has a grudge against Greg from the 4th grade because he sang a hurtful song about her. Angie suggested that he take over the school newspaper, but Greg plans to write about him, not him. The boy decided to take up wrestling. After all, he has been watching wrestling for years and knows the best moves, but everything turned out to be not as they show on TV. The gym teacher began to throw his small assistant until he lost consciousness. This time the man divided the students into groups. by weight categories. Greg had to wrestle against Freddy. Who would have thought that this loser would turn out to be such a tough fighter? He broke and threw our hero until he gave up. Greg came up with a plan. He will gain 5 kilograms of weight and move to the next group so that he will not have to fight against this machine again. Greg didn't want to wait until he got fat, so at the next weigh-in he just put his mom's weights on his legs, and so he got into the group with his friend, but he would have to fight with Petty, whose parents threatened to sue the school if she was forbidden to work out with the boys. In a second, Greg was on his shoulder blades and Petty was on the front page of the newspaper. The kid was the laughingstock of the school. Greg claims he lost on purpose because everyone would say he beat up a girl. The kid has another plan, to become the ultimate fashionista. A shirt and tie, that's all he needs. But Rowley sets him up and dresses the same way. They get laughed at again, and then Greg thinks for the first time that he needs a new best friend. In class, the kids are shown a self-esteem movie. The fat kid who has no friends got advice to be himself. He confessed that he loves breakdancing and dancing, immediately becoming popular among his peers. Greg senses a setup and thinks about Rowley again. He needs to somehow fix his best friend, and he starts with the selection of a suitable closet. Next, he trains Rowley to use only one strap on his backpack. Everything cool has only one strap, like an assault rifle and an electric guitar. Greg also repaints Rowley's pink bike black. Today is the biggest day of the year, Halloween, and Greg hopes his friend won't ruin it. Rodrigue entered the kitchen. The kids plan to go candy collecting in a rich neighborhood in town where they'll be sprinkled with Snickers and Milky Way. Rodrigue scares them that they will have to pass near the Devil's Grove. It used to be inhabited by Satanists who used to bake children into pizzas. Mr. Havley, as always, is going home from the teenagers who are up to throw paper at him. The kids were coming home satisfied with their stuffed bags, but then they got hosed down by the bullies. In his head, Greg shouted after them, and now he and Rowley have to hide from the chase. The friends hide in Greg's grandmother's house, but the hooligans are not going to leave them behind. To drive them away, Greg armed himself with a lawnmower, but accidentally scratches the car of red-haired Pete. He freaked out, and the little ones had to run away again. They hid in the Devil's Grove, where the bullies would not venture. The boys immediately heard the laughter of the Satanists and ran away from the grove in terror. But it turned out that it was Fregley's unicorn. The friends managed to return home, where they were poured water from a bucket by Mr. Heffley, thinking they were teenagers. In one of his classes, it was announced that the school patrol needed a new member, which is what Greg needed, to be a high school cop and punish bullies. The friends got their uniforms, 2 cups of cocoa and a chance to skip algebra. For that they have to walk the kids down the street, but then Ginger Pete's car shows up, and to escape, the 6th graders pretend to be kindergartners. They survive through the winter, but during the game Greg threw a sword at Rowley so that he broke his arm. Suddenly this piqued the interest of the girls, who wanted to sign the chubby boy a cast. That's how Rowley found himself at the table in cozy company, and Greg was waiting for Fraley at the usual place. The trickster decided to pull a scam and wrapped his arm with a bandage, but for some reason the girls didn't care about his pseudo-injury. The boy who drew comics in the newspaper fell ill, and a tempting job opened up. But first, he has to win an art contest. Greg thinks that he is a great joke and draws, but he could not come up with anything good. Then he called Rowley, but the talented artist seen dumb jokes of his friend, and he decided that he did not need such an assistant and sent Rowley away. Grog now has to take the kids outside by himself. It's raining outside, so Rowley gives him his raincoat. Red Pete's car shows up on the horizon, and Greg starts throwing the kids into a hole in the construction site to hide. Turns out it wasn't a hooligan, but the strange sight stirred up a local woman. Greg lied that he was Rowley and ran away, leaving the children alone in the rain. The contest came to an end, and a new artist for the school newspaper was chosen. Rowley's comic strip won, and the whole class was happy for him, except for his best friend. The popular kids began to say hello to the chubby boy, but then Rowley was called to him by the principal. He reprimanded the boy for his deed. He took away his uniform and demanded that he apologize to the kids. "Our actions speak of us," Mom once told Greg during a conversation, and he decided to sacrifice Rowley. However, the funny man is not discouraged. He drew a couple of new comics. "You are not a good friend," concluded Rowley. Greg thinks only of himself. He made fun of his clothes, broke his arm, called his comic book dumb, and set him up with kids. Rowley asked him not to call him anymore. They were no longer friends. Greg hoped it wouldn't be for long, but Rowley did stop talking to him, and then the kids told their parents, who had really scared them. The Greek lost his badge, and Rowley was made captain of the school patrol for showing courage under false accusations. Rowley has a new best friend, Colin, and of course Greg thinks Rowley is just doing this to piss him off, so he does the same and starts hanging out with Rowley. The boy finds Greg's candy, eats it, and goes crazy. He pulled a booger out of his nose and terrorized his guest with it, who locked himself in the bathroom and stayed there until the evening. Suddenly, Rowley slipped him a letter of apology. Greg reads it and only at the end learns that a booger was stuck to the letter and he was in on it. Greg decided to prove to Rowley that he didn't need him by becoming the star of the school production of The Wizard of Oz. Among all the kids, he really had the most beautiful voice, but he was too tall for male roles and was offered to play Dorothy, but Dorothy would play Patty because her mom is the president of the PTA. Then Greg agreed to play with the tree because the tree throws apples in town. The kid found out later that trees don't have hands, but holes still had to be made. When one of the students fell and knocked out a tooth. On stage, Greg was shy and stopped singing when he saw Rodrigue filming him. Patty threatened that if he ruined the performance, she would go on stage and beat him up again. The players threw an apple at her, but the girl intercepted it and threw it back at him. A shambles started on the stage and Patty resorted to wrestling moves after all. That was the end of the show, and even Mom was disappointed in Greg. The kid decided to get back at his older brother. He wrapped a candy bar in an adult magazine and put it in his brother's backpack. It all fell into the hands of little Manny. His mother proofread the young rocker in front of his group, much to Greg's delight. Too bad he wouldn't be able to share it with a friend. He gets a chance to talk to Rowley at their son's mom's dance night, but Colleen won't let Greg see his ex. Then our hero is very embarrassed to come here with his mom. Rowley, on the other hand, is having a blast and partying hard. Once he came to Greg and asked him to give him the disc with the game, but the harmful boy refused. Rowley got angry and remembered old grievances, his hand now crunching. A crowd of kids started demanding that the 6th graders fight, but they have no idea how to do it. That's when Red-Headed Pit and his gang drove up to the school. The bullies grabbed them. Pit ordered Rowley to pick up the damn cheese and eat it. The poor guy had to comply. Greg was supposed to be next, but the gym teacher chased the bullies away. The kids came running back and saw the horrible scene. Patty was ready to announce that Rowley was cursed, but Greg claimed that he was the one who ate the cheese. Rowley had only touched it. In front of everyone, he picked up the piece and declared that it was all nonsense. There was no curse. Angie appreciated Greg's good deed and he was able to get his friend back. Somehow, it turns out that of the two of them, only Greg is cursed, and no one shuns the cool guy Rowley.